what Haas is? Haas is like, if you've ever had something in your parents' house where you're like, why would you ever need this? Like something that's absolutely useless. That's Haas upgrades. Every season, Haas is like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna do this, this, and this. Oh, we're not. We're gonna focus on next season. And I'm like, bro, it's a cycle. It's the definition of insanity. Is listening to Gunter go, we're throwing. Like he's literally like, we know this car's not good. We can't develop. We're gonna throw it. And I was like, that's what you said last year,
and the year before,
and the year before, and the year before. And so it's like, I just feel like it's Groundhog Day with Haas. Like we're just circling the drain over and over again. Hulkenberg finishes in 14th. Magnussen obviously doesn't finish at all because they crashed out in the first thing. Hulk drove an okay race. Just the car is just not hooking up. It's not doing anything.
And it doesn't look like it will anytime soon. So this is just the reality of Haas. I love Gunther Steiner. I think he's a phenomenal personality. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder, though, and I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, at what point do you go a different direction?
Yeah.
He has had the team for years.
He's Danny Rick at McLaren.
At some point, you got to cut him loose. And again, I love him. He's a phenomenal just energy in F1.
Yeah.
But
You'd
again,
go to his wedding.
What?
You'd go to his wedding.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, if he invited. I mean, I don't think he's getting married
But
again.
would you have him run your F1 team if you owned one?
No. The data doesn't tell a lie.
The data doesn't tell a lie. So Haas is nowhere again in Brazil, which is not really a surprise.
No, it's not.
Here is the surprise, is that Williams was nowhere. Out of all of the bottom teams, Williams was nowhere.
Well,
on a weekend when AlphaTauri has suddenly snuck up right behind them.
They have.
And started giving him a creepy Joe Biden sniff. They are in a place where one of their cars didn't finish, and then the other one, which is Logan Sargent, ends at 11. Ben, your favorite driver, Logan Sargent.
Logan Sargent. Well, here's the thing. The one reliable driver in Williams, Alex Albon, crashed at the beginning. So if Alex was still in the race, they probably actually have some points. Like he's actually really good. The driver who isn't reliable and is nowhere ever when it comes to points or even getting close to points is their second driver, Sargent. So again, I'm not surprised. And he finished 11th.
Bro,
there were 6 cars
that went out
didn't finish.
You don't get to say you finished 11th. The reality is this 11th. Too. In one of the post interviews, he's talking to Laura Winters, and he's like, "Yeah, 11th." She's like, "It must be terrible," and he's like, "Oh, it's all right. Maybe it'll change tomorrow," because insinuating that he could be in the points again after he finished, like that was the first time. I was like, "Bro, get some points on your own merit. Like, get some points by racing. I don't know, by actually taking that car to the limits." I'm over Logan Sargent. I hope they drop him. There's no way they're keeping him.
I am so done. I can't even talk about it anymore. You need to show up. You need to get points.
Exactly.
Your teammate is showing up and showing out. The other rookie, Piastri, is showing up and showing out. You're not. So, and don't make comments about the points coming to you a day later.
Yeah.
Earn them. Right? The one point you haven't earned. It was given to you because of folks being disqualified. So, Williams, they're one good driver, and they only have one. Unfortunately, crashed out. So they were nowhere. Yeah.
First corner. Yeah, they were nowhere. And honestly, the next team I agreed to put in the position that they're in. And it is devastating to me because I went into this weekend with my expectations high. I wanted Hamilton to win. And Mercedes is nowhere in Brazil. It was depressing watching this happen on track. It was what I imagined it would feel to be a sports fan that lives in Ohio.
I'll give you that one. I went into this week with high expectations for Mercedes as well.
Wow.
And I'm not,
for once.
I am not a Mercedes fan, folks. And I haven't been. I have respect. You must have respect for
Toto demands respect.
Toto, Hammy, they demand respect. I can give that to them. But I went in and I even had them on the podium. I thought they were going to be competitive. They won last year. Russell won his first race last year during a season where they were nowhere. And so this seemed to be a good track for them. Hammy came back from last place at this track
and
he's
won.
An honorary Brazilian.
He's an honorary Brazilian
citizen.
This track is so important to him. He won his first world championship at this track.
There's so much history here. And I went into the weekend as well saying, okay, Mercedes is going to show up. And
Mercedes went into the weekend going, we're going to show up.
And they weren't even.
They crapped the bed, dude.
It was one of the most painful things to watch as teams like Alpine is passing them.
Bro, literally.
Alpine is stuck in 6th, and they're not.
Alpine is in no man's land, and
they're passing Mercedes during this race.
Yuki Tsunoda overtook Hamilton in the sprint race. I mean, it was out of control.
Unreal.
They were disappointed in themselves. I was like, my wife was concerned for my well-being because I was so devastated.
That's why I kept texting you.
Yeah,
I was like, have you
you're a troll.
Yet?
That's what you are.
I was concerned.
You're a troll with moles that lives under a bridge. That's what you are, and you're dressed in Red Bull garb. That's what you are. You just like to troll me.
I was concerned because I finished the race before you did. I knew you had some meeting you had to step away to or something like that. And so that's why I was like, have you gotten to finish it yet? I wanted to make sure that
no, that's not. Don't act like you're.
I'm serious.
No, you then texted me. You said, "I'll stop texting you now." All dramatic, which left me on the edge of my seat, wondering what's happened.
I was like,
you know what it did? It gave me false hope that Hamilton came back. Like they put on a pair of hards and they didn't work for anybody else, but the hard tire worked for Hamilton, and he roared to the front of the field.
He wanted the hard tire.
I know he wanted the hard
tire.
tires.
I don't know why.
Here's the thing: we went from Haas, Williams, and then Mercedes, and that's honestly that's how they ranked this weekend.
Yeah.
And as a Mercedes fan, I'm humble enough to admit when I'm wrong. I have the same level of humility that Max Verstappen has. So I'm able to admit when I'm wrong. And we had a wrong weekend. Alpine was ahead of us.
I'll say this to add. There's a couple of things that Toto said. If you want to watch the entire interview after the race, just watch it. It's
brutal.
It's quite sobering. It's very brutal. But one thing he said that I thought was so profound is that this car doesn't deserve a win. And that is when you put it again in context, this is the 8-time constructor champion from just a few years ago. They dominated in a way that hasn't happened yet. Red Bull this year is dominating, and that's unique in its own way. Mercedes did that as constructors for 8 years in a row. And 2 years away from that, Toto's saying, this car does not deserve a win. And this was the difficult thing, too, is like they don't understand why the highs are high and why the lows are low. They were second in Mexico.
The way they describe it is that it's on a knife's edge. Either it's going to be good or it's going to be trash. That's it. And you can't run a Formula One team like that. The other side of it is that both their drivers are like, I just can't wait to get to the other side of Abu Dhabi and throw this car in the trash.
Yeah, there's no other place for it. There's no other place for it. So
the problem is that their upgrade route is starting to look like Haas's upgrade route. And I got to be honest, it's freaking me out. I don't know where we're going to be next year, but I
there's not a lot of development time between now and next year. There really isn't, right?
No, and then next year, it's becoming a vicious cycle. Next year, I think they're doing 23 or 24 races. Like, it's going to be nuts. There's no time to do anything.
Yeah. Mercedes, it was a very, very difficult race to watch. Russell didn't finish the race. Hamilton came in 8th. It was his worst Interlagos finish in the hybrid era. Again, all joking aside, I felt for Toto. I felt for Hamilton in that moment because you saw how low this was for them. And that was a difficult thing to watch.
I think one of the things that we love about F1 is that it's 2 drivers, it's 10 teams, but at the end of the day, that each team has over 1,000 people working for it, and they are at the pinnacle of motorsport and technology. When you look at F1, the things that are in our cars today came out of F1 10 years ago. That's the level of innovation that comes out of F1.
Yeah.
And so you have these thousands of people that are working so hard, and their livelihood is attached to the results. They get bonuses, they get additional money, additional funding, all of that kind of stuff comes from race wins.
Yeah.
And they have been working so hard at Mercedes. They reference it every week. And then for them to come out at a track where they think they're going to be awesome, and it just is unacceptable. Inexcusable were the words that were used.
Yeah, no.
It was a rough weekend for Mercedes, but a pretty good one for Alpine. The team that we've been saying was absolutely completely average started 13th and 12th and ended both cars in the points. Ocon 10th, nursing issues.
Yeah,
he had issues through the whole race. And then Gasly finishing in 7th. Gasly has gotten to terms with that Alpine.
He really has, and this is one of the things that came up during a post-race conversation. Gasly is new to this team. Mm-hmm. We've said this before. You said this before. Ocon isn't. And Gasly has already surpassed him by quite a bit. And so at this point right now, Gasly has 62 points in 11th. Ocon has 46th and 12th. Yes, they're only one place apart, but Ocon's not going to catch him. No. And for Gasly to come in to a brand new team and to beat the guy who's been there, that's really significant. That's really significant in F1. So again, he did a great drive this weekend. You can't deny that, coming all the way from 13th up into 7th, up into the points. Yes, some folks didn't finish. It was still a great drive, and it was so sobering watching him pass Mercedes. Right?
Sobering for who? Sobering for me.
Sobering for you, but
your
for
car
the
was
sport.
Your guy was sauntering, drinking a shot of espresso 22 seconds ahead of everybody else.
He was, but looking at the history of Mercedes and their dominance, seeing an Alpine pass them, you're like, what?
Which gives hope for next year.
It really
because
does,
hopefully
actually.
They're able to make some adjustments. Ocon, controversy around him the entire weekend. He crashes into Alonso. We posted about it on our Instagram.
Alonso is kind of lollygagging around, driving around, and then Ocon
comes out of nowhere on a flying lap, tags him
into him, and then is like, "What is this guy?
What is this guy doing?" Tries to blame Alonso, and Alonso comes over and he goes, "I think he hit me. I don't know."
Like
massive damage
over the front of your
massive damage. Yeah, Ocon is like, I think he's starting to feel the pressure, is what it is, and this is one of the things we love about F1 is that again, you're going against the person next to you, and he's looking at Gasly, going, "Man, Gasly's gotten to terms with this car that I've been driving for the last 2 years,"
and
this guy.
And also for a little context too, him and Alonso used to be teammates, and they didn't get on.
No,
when they were teammates.
not even close.
They really didn't. So it was one of those moments where, and this is the really interesting thing. So you can watch the onboards where you can actually see the driver's hands as they're driving, and so Ocon, he's on a flying lap. He's going fast. Alonso's going slow because he's not on a flying lap, and Ocon hits one of the curbs, and you can see his hands kind of like are trying to control the car.
Well, the back end kicks out, so he has to counter steer.
So he's trying to control the car, which then pushes him right into Alonso. And Alonso, you can see he's kind of checking his mirrors.
Like, what the heck?
And there's this one moment where he is making a left turn, but his hands turn go a little left towards Ocon, and you just. It's like it's just barely noticeable, but you're like, did you put your car?
Alonso is literally, this season has become one of my favorite drivers.
He's so smart.
It's intimidating, bro.
Oh,
it is crazy.
But anyway, it was quite a thing to watch. Them kind of just go at it during the earlier part of the weekend.
We already talked about Ferrari. Leclerc didn't finish the race. Sainz finished in 8th place.
Well, I think he finished 6th. Yeah,
he finished in 6th, started in 8th. So he made up 2 places.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a race winner.
Yeah.
Ferrari was asked in the pre-race press conference, "Hey, are you guys happy? Are you trying to go after 2nd place?" And their response was, "No, we're not happy. 2nd is better than 3rd, but we're going after 1st." Ferrari is a machine.
Wait. First this year?
No, next year. They know they can't get first this year.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, they're insinuating that they're not happy unless they're at the front of the grid, which I get.
Which they haven't been for a long time.
A very long time. And
is it decades now? When were they back in front of the grid?
Man, I don't know. We'd have to fact check that.
We literally have to.
I just think they have the drivers. I think Sainz and Leclerc are some of the greatest drivers of this generation. I just don't think they have the car.
No.
And Ferrari is a proud team that struggles to admit that. But their car is not where it needs to be. And Sainz finished, but he couldn't really fight any further up.
No.
6th is okay, but it's not going to win you a world championship.
And again, Sainz was the only person this year besides a Red Bull who won a race. Last year, Charles was going at Max at the beginning, and then it was the team that crumbled around him and really failed him. And so this is why there's so many parts and pieces and complexities, and everything has to be well oiled. So when you see a team that gets it right, we make assumptions about why they got it right, and we think it's easy. But then when you see a team like Ferrari, who is so storied and has so much history with dominance, and they can't get it right because one little thing is off or this piece is off, you realize how freaking hard it is to win a race, B, a world championship.
Exactly. And Ferrari, they want to be world championship.
They deserve to be. Their brand deserves to be.
They're amazing.
They really deserve to be.
The hard part for me is that even though he finished in P6, he finished in P6 with a handicapped Mercedes.
Yes.
So the reality is that they are in a battle with Mercedes. And had Mercedes been on the other side of the knife edge this past weekend, then Ferrari would have been in trouble. That would have looked a lot more like a 7th or 8th place, because he didn't pass Mercedes even though they were handicapped until quite a distance into the race, probably 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, it was quite a distance. But also the thing too is mathematically there is the possibility that they can actually catch Mercedes for 100%. They're only 20
they scored more
back.
points, which is why they're ahead this week. I concede we did not have a good weekend. I get it. Ferrari, it was good. It was so weird. Leclerc said it was a hydraulics issue, and then they went silent. And the Ferrari people are like, we can't actually tell you what the problem was, which leads me to believe that it's a power unit issue, which is crazy because it's one thing for the power steering to go out, but his rear wheels locked like that. Imagine doing 100 miles an hour and someone just pulls your e-brake while you're going around a corner. That's essentially what happened to Charles Leclerc. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. This is the craziest thing to me. Okay, so we're heading towards now the top 3-4 teams.
We are
going to say a name that neither of us at the beginning of the inception of this podcast in general thought that we would be putting in the top 3.
No.
AlphaTauri.
Unreal.
Incredible.
So AlphaTauri were they dead last a couple weeks ago in the championship?
Dead last.
Dead.
Every single reporter, every single article, everyone said this is the worst car. They said this is the worst car. Their team principal said, I came into this, everyone told me, the mechanics, the aero, all of the designers said this was going to be a great car. They lied to me. That's literally what he said. Like, he just doesn't care because he doesn't have a job next season. Like, he's like, they fired me. I'm like, whatever. Yep. I'm quote unquote retiring.
Yeah.
And they came in the last 2 weekends. It's been insane. We've got Yuki Tsunoda. In 9th place. Danny Rick coming from the pit lane. He was over a lap behind at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
the car's on fire.
The car's on fire. For context, they have jumped from last to 8th place. Williams is in 7th place. Williams has been chilling out. They
thought they had this in the bag.
They had it in the bag, which is great for them because in years past they've not finished very high.
I love Williams.
And Albon was putting in good points. The other driver, Sarge, wasn't, but Albon was carrying the team. Over the last 3 races, AlphaTauri has scored 16 points, and now they're only 7 points back from Williams, who has only scored 5 points. And previous to this, Alpha had only scored 5 points over 17 races.
Yeah. It was nothing.
They've scored 16 over the last 3 races. They are on a rip. And Yuki this weekend scored in the sprint.
I love Yuki
and
Tsunoda.
Scored in the race. And we've not had the most generous things to say about Yuki recently.
I love Yuki. I saw an interview this last week where they a bunch of Formula One drivers, and they said, "What's your dream?" And it was like Sainz to be a world champion, Lando to be a world champion, George to be a world champion, Yuki open up my own restaurant. I love Yuki Tsunoda. He is my hero. He's so funny. He's like 4'8" or something. Like he's the tiniest little human with the craziest little attitude. He's like a cartoon character.
We had talked about, emotion in sport, and we had talked about how Yuki expressed a lot of that emotion in Mexico. It cost him and his team a lot of points. This week he
was mature.
He turned something around and scored some serious points. Again, over the last 3 races, Williams has actually only scored 5 points, and AlphaTauri has scored 16 points. So it is an incredible thing to watch this team within such a short period of time come around. And again, with 2 races left, mathematically, they can take that next position from Williams.
They're going into Williams territory. Williams is historically good in Abu Dhabi and is expected to be good in Vegas. No one really knows, but because they're high speed, low drag races, which is that Williams is so slippery and so fast in a straight line. But so is the AlphaTauri now.
Yeah.
And here's the difference for me between AlphaTauri and Williams is that
they have 2 drivers who can score points.
Logan is placed. You told me this right before we came on. Logan is 21 in the drivers' championship. There's 20 drivers. He's 21.
Logan is 21st
because the reserve driver for AlphaTauri outscored him when he came onto the grid for like 5 races after the dude had been on the grid for like 14 at that point.
That should tell you
everything you need to know about, because the Williams was a car that could score points because Albon was scoring points. Here's the thing. AlphaTauri, they have a car now that can score points. Williams has a car that can score points. Williams has Albon, who is an incredible driver.
Albon's great. We love Albon.
But he doesn't have anything to prove with that car. But you have Yuki, who now has something to prove against Liam. And you have Ricciardo, who has something to prove to Red Bull.
He does.
And you have 2 drivers that are driven to the nth degree, and they say, I need every point I can get, and I will do everything that I need to get it. That's the difference.
That is the difference. That's such a great point. You've got motivation.
Yes.
And when you have motivation in sport, I mean, it's unreal the results. What can happen. And so they're up there. We're talking about them because they came out lights out. And again, Ricciardo,
we put them third best team on Sunday, and I sign off on that.
That's
James
crazy.
Crocker.
Crazy to think about them being that high, but they deserve it. And I'll say this: even though it's a race at the bottom of the grid, I'm excited to see what happens between Williams and Alpha over the last 2 races because it's just up in the air. We have no idea what's going to happen.
We're scrapping. Haas and Alfa Romeo we've written off, but Williams and AlphaTauri, I'm here for it. It's very exciting.
All here for it.
Second best on Sunday was by far McLaren, and 100% because of Lando Norris.
Wait a second. I think we actually have them the third best. We got Aston still.
Oh my gosh. Third best. You're right.
Oh my gosh.
Is McLaren. Okay. So Norris finishes second. Does an incredible drive.
Norris has been on a rip. I think this is Austria. He has scored the second most points besides Max since Austria.
Oh, man. I was like, why when they got Russell from Mercedes, I was like, guys, really? We couldn't get Norris? Like, we couldn't get Norris. Imagine Hamilton and Norris together. That's next level.
That'd be phenomenal. But McLaren they've turned it around. And this weekend, unreal. Norris
Phenomenal
again went from 7th to 2nd in the first opening stint because of all the damage. But it wasn't just because of that. He was overtaking people.
Oh,
he had a killer start.
Yes. F1 is about what opportunities are presented to you.
Yeah, and he is taking those opportunities. It's one of these things, too, where here's the thing I love about Norris. He has been scoring incredible points.
Mm-hmm.
He's been finishing on the podium.
Mm-hmm.
He's running up to Max only, but you see the hunger and the dissatisfaction still. And even though he's better than the other 18 drivers behind him, you still see that. Even in his comments where he's like, hey, there's still that one car in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he's in post-race interviews, he's just like, yeah, well, there's still... And that is so exciting for next year.
Exactly.
When McLaren can build off of this car.
The momentum.
They've
got the big mo
next year.
They've got the big mo. Norris is an incredible driver. He's also very different than the rest of the grid. He's not aggressive. He's not overly, I don't know what the word is, but he's not this crazy large personality. He's just a
really balanced
driver.
Yeah, I feel like he's a really balanced human being. Like, there's a lot of joy that he brings to the sport, a lot of energy, a lot
laughter,
of
almost innocence.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting
innocence to it.
Yeah.
Where he's like, maybe innocence isn't the right word, but as much as purity. There's a purity to what he brings to the field.
Yeah, there's a purity of like enjoyment of the sport for the sport's sake.
Yes. He doesn't get caught up in the drama.
Yeah.
He doesn't get caught up in any of that kind of stuff. He just goes, I want to go out there and race and I want to win.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's phenomenal. You see some of the drivers where you really want them to have that kind of understanding of the sport. And I do think that, it's just an incredible understanding of the sport for what it is. And he's maximizing the car that he has right now. Yeah.
And he did it. I mean, he was pushing Max on one of those laps, and then Max of course was like, okay, I'm done and goodbye. He left, but
it was fun, but we're done.
Max in the post interview, he was like, Lando came at me, it was really fun defending. What was interesting to me is that if anyone was wondering if Max has lost his racecraft, not even an ounce of it, that he defended magnificently against Norris. He is, as much as I don't like to admit it, an incredible race car driver. Oh my goodness. But we don't need to jump into Max yet.
Unreal.
We'll wait because Piastri finished 14th, which is dead last.
Which was last,
but at the same time, he was, to his defense, he got knocked in the back of the gearbox in the beginning crash with Albon and Magnussen, and they tried to repair his car. He started from the pit lane, super far behind with Danny Ricciardo, but at the same time, the car wasn't fully repaired.
No, it wasn't. They did a phenomenal job as a team to get that car back on the racetrack.
I'm surprised they didn't retire it because it just clearly had zero pace.
I mean, but also he's a rookie, so just the experience of him racing on this track will benefit him for next year. So
100%. I think again, the last thing I'll say about McLaren is that Norris has again solidified any question that anyone had whether or not Piastri was going to give him a run for his money. Norris is like, nah, the guy's got.
Just as Max has kind of like slap down Norris when he gets too close, Norris has in turn done that to Piastri. He's like, okay, we're done here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to slap it down and say, I'm the one who's leading this team.
It's like when you're a kid and you have like an older sibling and you're wrestling and like you get one good hit in and then all of a sudden it changes from fun to you're laying flat on your back and you have no idea why. And it's only because your older sibling was like, nah, I need to put you in your place.
Yep. I have lots of brothers. So
as one of 322 children,
Only 14.
Fun fact, Ben has enough siblings to field an entire soccer team.
Lots of siblings. Baseball we can have covered, football, soccer, basketball.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
13?
14 including you?
14 total. So including.
Oh, that's a lot of children. God bless your mother.
Anyway,
and Aston Martin. Okay, what happened? What happened?
I had to take a breath to just settle my beating heart. We have went into Aston Martin the last few pods, and it hasn't been good.
No.
Because they haven't been good.
100%. They've deserved everything.
They deserved it.
By the way.
We were justified in everything we said.
Yes.
They started great. they sucked. And they sucked for a while. And
they dropped off, and they
them.
were just in no man's land. And we were questioning drive from Stroll. We were questioning whether or not Alonso wanted to stay.
Yeah,
we were questioning
bounce.
whether or not Aston Martin was just going to suddenly completely nosedive performance-wise.
If Senior Stroll was going to sell his portion of the team, which who knows?
All of it. They come into this weekend, all of this is swirling. There's all this drama with Alonso and his seat, all this kind of stuff, whatever. And then they qualify third and fourth. And
they lock out the second row.
Stroll out-qualifies Alonso. Now, there are many factors to that. Yes, there was some crazy weather stuff, but at the same time, F1 is F1. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Where you qualify is where you qualify. Yeah. And Stroll out-qualified Alonso. And I was like,
stunning. Finally,
let's freaking go. Stroll, give me a reason to believe in you. And he did this weekend. I will gladly admit that I am wrong if this is the kind of racing that he brings to the table moving forward. He started in third. He finished in fifth.
Yeah.
He, along with Alonso, who finished in third, they brought home a haul of points for Aston Martin.
Absolutely.
Exactly what they needed.
Absolutely. It actually puts them back into contention with McLaren mathematically, which is insane to even think
crazy.
about.
That's actually crazy.
Right? It's insane. They're only 21 points back now. But here's the crazy thing. And Ted Kravitz, who we affectionately call Teddy Bear, said something.
Don't loop me into that. Don't loop me into your love affair with Ted Kravitz.
Ted Kravitz. One day we'll talk soon. We'll talk soon in this pod. But he said something in the post-race conversations that Aston abandoned their upgrades, which clearly weren't working for them, and they went back to what they had at the beginning of the year.
And it crushed.
Here's the thing about upgrades. So many of these upgrades are actually downgrades.
Correct.
Right? You look at teams where like, we're bringing an upgrade.
It's a gamble. It's a risk.
It's a gamble. It's a risk. It's an unknown. You're adding a new element to your car. You're hoping it works out. And they've been adding new elements. It hadn't been working out. So they're like, let's scrap this. Let's go back to what we were doing in the beginning when we
knew we had a farce car that was actually getting podiums and winning and scoring points. So it was an amazing weekend for Aston. Stroll did a great job driving. I have nothing bad to say about Stroll. He overtook cars. He was strategic. He was unemotional. He was very driven and purposeful in his driving. He did a phenomenal job. The real star of the entire weekend was Fernando Alonso. He has become, like I said this season, he has become my third favorite driver. He's out. It used to be for me Hamilton, Norris, Checo. It's now Hamilton, Norris, Alonso, Checo. Like, he is insane. He's incredible.
In an Aston Martin, put on a defensive masterclass for multiple laps with Checo bearing down on him for third place. He doesn't have DRS. And
so
he is
DRS
defending.
is when they have the ability to open up their rear wing to reduce the drag, and it gives them about additional 14 to 15 miles per hour down the straights. And there's certain parts on the track where the person that is following behind you, if they're within 1 second, they can open up their DRS flap, which is their rear wing, to be able to get that extra speed to overtake you. It's supposed to make the racing better. But the thing that Alonso did that was so incredible is that he kept Checo far enough behind, kept enough of his battery power to deploy his hybrid system to give him that boost of extra energy to be able to pull far enough away from Checo. He would move into the clean air. He would see Checo move out of because every time he did that, Checo would go into dirty air and his tires would slide around, and then he couldn't pull up. And he kept, we know factually, the faster car on better tires behind him for lap after lap after lap after lap.
It was unreal.
Insane.
His racecraft was incredible. He was taking untraditional lines so that he would have more acceleration out of the line. So there was one point where he's not going over the curb, which is what you would normally do. He's going wider so that he can accelerate quicker and keep that distance between him and Checo. It was one of the most incredible defensive races.
It had you on the edge of your seat. I was on the edge of my seat for like 15 laps. I was like, sure, this is it. This is it. This is it. This is it.
No.
They didn't cut away from it.
No, they couldn't.
That's how you could. And it ended with Checo on lap 70 of 71 finally getting ahead of Alonso. And so Checo comes from fourth, goes into third place around Alonso. And Alonso, in the post-interview, said, I thought I had lost at that point, but I stuck with him just in case. And Perez made one small mistake. And all of a sudden, Alonso is back in front of Perez, then leads around, and then Perez pulls out on the dead straight. They finish the race 0.05 of a second apart. At 200 miles an hour, they are literally neck and neck.
Unreal.
To the human eye, you cannot distinguish who finished first.
No.
It was a photo finish. It was one of the greatest F1 race endings I have ever seen in my life.
It was incredible. I am obviously a Red Bull fan. In that moment, I was willing Alonso to win, willing him, because I was like, this is such an incredible.
See how loyal Red Bull fans are. I would never say that as a Mercedes fan.
Alonso's different.
This is true.
Alonso has transcended the sport. He's the OG. He's been around for decades. He's been raced. He's forgotten more about F1 than half these drivers will ever learn. And in that moment, you can't help but stand up and just cheer. He's
been driving in F1 since before Piastri was born.
Again, like in that moment, you just have to stand and salute the great.
Yeah,
and in that moment, he was the great. And he outshone Max to even me. He just did such a phenomenal job.
He did. I thought what was really cool is that it's because, what he's proving is that it is about what car you're in, but at the same time, it's also about what kind of a driver you are. And one of the things that I love, and we posted about this, is the sportsmanship between him and Checo, the respect.
Yeah.
Both of them said there were probably few people on the track that we could go wheel to wheel with and race that close and trust that we wouldn't end up in the wall.
Oh yeah, it was close several times.
They were inches apart. And both of them were like, they walked up to each other in the middle of a press conference. Checo gives him a hug and was like, man, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Alonso was joking like, man, let's not do that again. I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm stressed out. Please. That was so stressful. Like, it was just so cool to see that level, you can have that level of competition and still maintain civility throughout it.
Yeah, no, that was an incredible thing to see. And not every racer does that. Like some racers you do not want to get close to. You can't trust them.
Yeah.
Ocon and Alonso, two of them. But
Alonso's friend.
But no, it was an incredible finish. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen a finish besides 2021. That was
again,
close.
I prefer that level of, I loved. We always end up at 2021 on this podcast.
We do.
Episode. It was one of the best seasons, but one of the things I did not like was the pettiness I felt between drivers and teams. It was amusing, but after a while I was like, oh, this actually isn't healthy for the sport.
Yeah.
And I much prefer what I saw between Checo and Alonso and that level of respect. And I get it. It's intense when you're going after a world title ship,
but these are the only people who understand you.
Exactly.
Right? These 20 guys.
You're 20 in the entire world. That's a lonely place to be.
There's 20 of you. Like you only understand each other, and therefore you have to have respect for each other because you're it. There's no one else that understands you.
Mm-hmm. I'll say this for Checo as we go into our greatest team. Oh gosh, that hurts to say.
You said it. You heard it here, folks. Our greatest team. You're right. You are right.
That hurts so bad. Red Bull again. Max was a 31 out of the last 39 races he has won. And that in and of itself is an incredible
It's
stat.
staggering.
It's amazing. He matches or beat Alain Prost in total race wins career-wise this weekend, and he's nowhere close to the end of his career.
No.
Alan Prost being one of the greatest F1 drivers in history, and widely respected. And so he's on fire. I don't know what else to say. And Checo drove a great race from P9 to ending at 4th, I believe is what it was. And
almost on the podium again.
Almost on the podium. 0.05 of a second off of the podium.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend for Red Bull. The elephant in the room is, why was Max 34 seconds ahead of Checo?
That's a great question. It probably had something to do with Alonso's defense for the last third of the race.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Checo couldn't get past him.
Okay.
If he had gotten into clean air, it would have been closer, but still.
Okay, I'm going to give you that, and then I'm going to ask you, why did he qualify P9?
It's Checo. We talked about reliability. I mean, what else am I going to say? It's Checo. Your team, something about reliability issues.
Whoa, one race, and I get the reliability card. One race, we have an oil heating issue.
Reliability.
For a second, man, Russell had an overheating oil pan. It went from driving a Mercedes to a BMW in a second. It was incredible.
For a second.
That was so rude. That was
Toto. Here's the thing. Toto probably legitimately feels like that's where they're at. That's how low it is because of where they came from.
Toto's worried that he's not going to get invited back to Harvard to be a guest lecturer next year because of how trash it's going. They're like, actually, we have Horn Dog coming in if that's cool. Do you mind doing a lecture after him? You've got half the amount of time.
Opening up for Horn Dog, and then you can,
Ouch.
Anyway, but no, Red Bull.
Oh, Harvard, no. Amazing.
So Red Bull.
Red Bull wins.
Red Bull wins. There's nothing new. And when this doesn't happen again next season like this, look back.
Yeah.
And recognize how historic this was. This isn't going to happen next year.
This is not going to happen next year. Hopefully.
I don't think it will.
I don't think it will. I think the teams will progress. And I will say this. They have deserved it. Max is beyond the car. You can see it. Checo's not a schmuck of a driver. Max is getting the most out of that car. He deserves every one of these race wins. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he really does.
The thing that I'll say is that even with this, as Max winning every race, if you were to take Max out of it, this has been an incredible season.
It
Alonso,
really has been.
Norris, Hamilton, Ocon, P3 in Monaco. It has been a crazy season. It has been competitive like no other. The teams are all over the place. AlphaTauri coming out of nowhere. Williams up, and it is
Aston
great.
Falling and rising.
It's an incredible season. I'm very happy with this season. We're getting 2 races, and I'm already feeling the end of season depression that comes with it.
What am I going to do with
5 months for a race? It's not really fun.
My Fridays, my Saturdays, my Sundays. What am I going to do?
What am I supposed to do? Spend time with my family? This is crazy.
I know. I watched the shows with my boys, and they love the opening theme music.
Henry watches it, and he goes, my son, he's not even 2 years old. He goes, vroom, vroom, race car. It's the best.
Yesterday, my 2 boys, we were at a big kind of garden, and there was a little kind of racetrack. And they're running around, and my oldest, who's 4 years old, was running and shouting, and he was like, "Max Verstappen, wheel to wheel!"
Oh
and
my!
I literally was looked at my wife, and she's like, "Wait, what does that mean?" I was like, "Oh."
Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, ba.
I was like, "Yes." It's incredible, but
you're a phenomenal father. That's what you should know. That's what that tells me. You're a great dad.
Thank you. I've trained them up well. One thing I'll say about Max and Red Bull, they are 400 points clear of second place Mercedes.
It is insane.
It's and then Max, it's going to be the largest winning margin in the history of the sport. Every commentator post races just saying there's no more records to break. They're breaking all the records. They're done.
Max is heading towards the elite of Formula One. He's heading he's about to surpass Sebastian Vettel in all-time race wins, which is insane because Vettel's a world champion,
a god of the sport, really.
And so he's he's ushered himself into the greatest of all time, and it's been incredible to watch and be a part of it from his rise from the 17-year-old at, it's nuts.
It was a special thing as he's
Untouchable.
on his victory lap. The team plays this song that he and his dad would play as they were driving from their home in the Netherlands down to Italy when he was karting. And it's the green, green grass of home.
And Tom Jones, what a song.
And they're playing it, and you just see Max driving, and because you don't hear what's on the radio all the time, you hear little bits and pieces, and he's on this victory lap, and you see this he's like this hesitation of like, I don't know if I want to sing it.
I know he's going, I'm not a good singer.
And then he just can't help it. He starts singing,
and he just starts singing it.
And Horn Dog, of course, at the end was like, "Hey, don't quit your day job." And
yeah, exactly.
But it was this really special moment where you almost see him as like, yeah, he's this untouchable world champion, but at the same time, he's like this kid, and it was this moment where he just is transported back, and it's almost like you see the totality of his life to this point, where it's like, here's a guy whose dad, admittedly was really hard on him. And pushed him, but his dad knew what he had inside of him.
Exactly.
And when you see the dominances he's had this season, it was just a really special microcosm of a moment of his career. It was really unique.
I agree. I think overall the Brazilian Grand Prix was, from a holistic Formula One perspective, a phenomenal weekend. I think it was great. Yeah. It brought the battle. Red Bull went further away, but it did bring the battle of Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren closer together.
It brought Williams and AlphaTauri closer together.
I think we're going into the last two races, and there's plenty of jeopardy. There's plenty of wild cards that are ready to play.
And we didn't even talk about the biblical storm that showed up.
Literally turned into a night race. Like, it went from day to night during qualifying.
It was like the plagues were coming into Brazil. You're like, what is going on?
One of the grandstand roofs collapsed. There was one reporter that was like, hey, posted a picture, and it was like the grandstand roof that almost collapsed. He's like, almost got decapitated by this. Like, it was just nuts.
Unreal.
And then after the race, the fans busted through one of the fences and just flooded the race.
The stewards called in
while
the
cars were still driving around
of the race, and they called them in and said, "What the heck was going on?"
Yeah. It was a wild weekend, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
The Wild Wild West down in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. But it was a good weekend, and it was good for Formula One. That's what happened on track. But there were a few things that also happened off track, whether it was leading into the weekend or in the paddock itself.
Talk to us about Felipe Massa. He shows up this weekend, and there's some history, and there's some tension, there's some legality going on. Talk about what was going on with him this weekend.
So what's interesting about this weekend is that we had a Formula One race in Brazil.
We did.
No Brazilian drivers, but we had Hamilton, who's an honorary Brazilian. Yeah. But what we have to remember is that Brazil is actually quite a rich history with Formula One.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you've got Nelson Piquet, who was a 3-time world champion, who was a Brazilian. And we've had multiple Brazilian drivers over the years who have been phenomenal. And so Brazil and Formula One, they go hand in hand. And one of their most formidable drivers over the years was a man named Felipe Massa. And he now previously used to do commentary and reporting work for Formula One TV and F1 and all those kind of things, and write articles and all that kind of stuff. But after there was some news that came out that the one season where he lost his world championship by 1 point to Sir Lewis Hamilton was because of a race that happened in Singapore where Nelson Piquet Jr.'s son was all in Brazil. It's all crazy. Through the race, by the direction of his team principals, he crashed the car purposefully, which Felipe Massa is now saying is the reason why he didn't finish the race in the points, which would have then put him as world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, he is in a lawsuit with both, I believe, the FIA and Formula One to sue them for 30 million euros in damage.
It's a decent amount of money.
That's a chunk of change, my friend.
Well, you can
And
do that.
I'll take 10%. And he's suing them for that, and he wants his world titleship, which, by the way, is currently residing with its owner, which is Sir Lewis Hamilton. So
it was his first one, correct?
Correct, which is where he won at Sao Paulo race course, which we raced at this last weekend. So as a Brazilian and as a previous Formula One driver, he was at the Formula One race in Sao Paulo. It's where he lives. It's his home country.
Yeah.
Now, some of the key contributors to the case are the nameless and the faceless of the FIA and the Formula One governing body. No one knows them.
Yeah.
But Nelson Piquet Jr., the guy who crashed during the Felipe Massa massacre, is his teammate at the time was a little-known man that some of us may know as Fernando Alonso.
Oh, Fernando.
And so
he was there this weekend.
He was there this weekend, which is why when Felipe was asked by multiple sources as to why he was showing up, because he wasn't, quote unquote, necessarily welcome by Formula One because of the fact that he has a pending $30 million lawsuit against them in a British court, he said, well, Fernando's involved in that, but he seems to be here all right. And so there's this drama with this Felipe Massa character. And all of that aside, the long and the short of it is this. I am really nervous that if this case comes to fruition and he wins, gets his 30 million euros and his world title, well, what happens to that year where Hamilton won it? So now does Hamilton go from 7 to 6? And if so, what door does that open for 2021?
It's such a
it's biblical
precedent. It's just such a bad precedent because it happened. It's over.
It's over.
And
it's
we've
been
moved
over.
on. And it's been over. And it's done.
Since 2007 or 2008. It's something like that.
At this point, right? And so this is something that's so unique. Again, there are moments when the governing body of a sport gets it wrong. That's just the reality, right? There are moments when the umpire or the ref makes a bad call and it has massive implications.
Yeah.
They're part of the governing body, the framework for that sport. And so for a competitor to say, I can go back into history and I can change the outcome of this because there was something that went awry that ultimately, I believe, cost me the championship. It's not even that was the race that if he would have won the championship. That was a race in the season.
No, it wasn't the last. Exactly, it wasn't the last race. There's so much conjecture attached to it. Like there was also a botched pit stop in that. But he's blaming the crash because there's so many hearsays in the whole case as a whole. I don't think it would come to fruition. I really hope it doesn't because. I want to watch a race, and at the end of the race, I mean, I was mad when we found out that points got awarded to Sargent after the fact. I don't want to
Logan Sargent this sport. No.
Exactly. It's over. It's over. If you didn't get it, you didn't get it. And I get that it's there's regulations and there's safety and there's things give us a time period, but there's got to be gosh, this is a terrible analogy. Should I do it? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. There's a statute of limitations.
I was literally just going to say that.
And after a certain amount of time, no matter what evidence comes out, if the crime isn't worth prosecuting because you can't, it's over. And to me, it's got to be within the race season. It's got to be within maybe within a year for certain things like cost cap and all those. I get that there's certain things that take time to overlook, but you can't be drawing back 5, 10, 15 years. Then you start getting into an argument about what if this regulation existed back then, if that regulation, then this would do this. And then the whole sport just unravels. And instead of being about sporting and racing and driving and tracks and fans, it becomes about legality and they did this and they did that. And so now we're winning on technicalities instead of raw talent.
Something that Toto said after 2021 that I have a lot of respect for him and that he said it. And he said, we want to win this on the track. We are not going to win this championship in the court or off the track.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. During the race, during the track, Max won. There's tons of complexity around that, but that's what happened. And Toto said, we're not going to win this way. That's not our style.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that.
Exactly.
And Mercedes will get back to winning. They will.
100%.
They've got Toto. They've got Hammy.
Damn right
They're
we
going to get back to winning. And when they do,
They
it'll
Hammy.
be sweet.
Yep.
It really will be sweet for all the Mercedes fans in the world. And I'll be pissed. But at the same time, you'll tip your hat because a team like Mercedes has to get back to winning. The sport demands it.
Exactly.
Winning,
Everyone's pushing towards it. It is bound to happen.
It's bound to happen, but you win on the track.
Exactly.
You don't win in some court 15 years later.
No.
And so I think, for this, it's just such a bad precedent, but I'm really hoping that the powers that be make the right call here because, it was definitely something off the track that a lot of complexity around it this weekend.
I think the other thing I would say off track is that the one thing that I want to talk about is Sergio's seat. I think we come into this weekend and we see Sergio doing a good performance.
Better.
100%. Fourth place is nothing to snuff at unless you're in a Red Bull. And then it kind of is something to go,
unless you got held up by an Aston Martin.
Exactly.
And again, it's Alonso. It's still an Aston Martin.
It's an Aston Martin. That car is nowhere near as good as the Red Bull. Data doesn't lie. It's nowhere near. So at that point, it becomes less about the machine you're in and more about the driver. And so for me, that was the hard part with Checo.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I were Checo, I wouldn't come out of Mexico where I DNF'd on the first lap into Brazil where I lost to a McLaren and a Aston Martin and go, oh yeah, I'm back on form.
Yeah, there were a lot of commentators who were saying, Checo's back, and when he took that third place podium in the last lap, it was like okay, and then Alonso took it back. I was like, oh, I guess you're not back.
Yeah,
I guess you. And here's the thing too, Alonso.
Well, he was back. He was 34 seconds back from his teammate in the same car as him.
True. Alonso over this weekend expressed a lot of frustration and anger for people who have been spreading rumors about him leaving.
Like a mob boss.
We talked about it last week as well.
Like, is he coming after us?
No,
but
here's the thing.
There will be he said there will be what did he say? There will be repercussions or consequences to these rumors.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, bro, what are you, like the flipping soprano of F1? Like, what is happening here?
So here's the thing, a little context. This weekend, a lot of the commentators were saying, Alonso, he just loves Aston. They're just such a great team. There's such great chemistry. And I was like, yeah, hang on a second.
He loved Alpine.
He's at Alpine. The weekend of his birthday, when the team is celebrating him and him being part of the team and his birthday, guess what he did that weekend?
Signed
like
contract.
A savage, he signed a contract with Aston Martin.
Exactly.
There's this assumption that there's this closeness and this tightness between these teams. And again, they're
hired guns.
They're hired guns at the end of the day. And when you're winning, sure, you're close. But guess what? When things look better somewhere else, and when there's a better opportunity, and when the clock is ticking, and you want to win not just races but a championship.
Yeah, exactly.
Guess where you're gonna go? You're gonna go to the team that can offer you that. So I don't think all of us are way out in left field, throwing it out there and saying, based on what we know about Alonso, based on his history, based on what he says he wants. This actually is not out of the realm of possibility.
And it's only an upside for Alonso.
Of course
it's only an upside. He's at Aston Martin, which has a ton of money behind it right now. They just are in the phase of building their second of 3 brand new buildings to continue their domination 7-year plan into Formula One. He's at a team that has a future that loves him and wants him, and he has performed for them. They're not going to want to give him up. But now
Alpine didn't want to give him up either.
No, but Red Bull is Red Bull, and they are insane right now. And so even if they weren't thinking about Alonso, you bet your bottom dollar they're thinking about him now. So Alonso does not lose no matter how this goes or who talks about it or where it goes. Either way, he is being presented as the hot tamale of this situation.
It's a win-win situation.
And the desirable driver. And he is.
He held up a Red Bull for like 20 laps.
He's 42 years old and he is annihilating.
I mean, who wouldn't want Alonso after this weekend? Just period. Like,
the guy's incredible.
He's an unreal racer, and so he's saving face. I really think he is saving face by saying, "I would never do this. I'm upset with the folks who would say that." At the same time, it is not out of character for him to want to go win a championship and go be with a team that can give him that. That's why he went to Aston.
Yeah.
Who's to say he wouldn't make that leap again to another team?
Exactly.
Like a Red Bull.
Yeah.
That can offer him that.
Which is interesting, and it leads us kind of into our next segment, which is where we talk about, why we love F1.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we love F1 is because it is a sport of changing fortunes. And
it really is.
It's different than a lot of sports because it is a meritocracy. It is all about, if you're the best, then yes, you have a role. If you're not, then we will move on.
Yep.
And so the greatest drivers go to the greatest teams, and the greatest teams pull the greatest drivers. Instead of in American sports where you have the best draft pick goes to the worst team.
I should know this, being from Cleveland and seeing
many of best draft picks you've gotten.
The best draft picks, legitimately the best up and coming talent, go to one of our teams, the worst team, so poorly managed, so poorly coached. There was one point where when LeBron came onto the Cavs, the team that was around him, I was like, who are these guys? Why do we deserve this kid? Yeah, he's from Northeast Ohio, but like, are you serious? But that's what makes American sports so unique. And ultimately, it is a factor that does impact teams that are lower on the grid, as it were, right? Teams that aren't performing well have a chance when you've got a great draft pick. It is a magnet for other talent to come, and it really can give a lot of energy to a team that's not doing well. F1, you don't have that.
It's ruthless.
It is.
It's cutthroat.
Absolute cutthroat, where the teams at the top at the end of the season get the most money, and then I think, from what we can tell, it's maybe $10 million per spot all the way down. So let's just say, for example, that Red Bull, we'll throw numbers out there, gets $100 million at the end of the season. You know how much the team at the bottom is getting? They're getting $10 million. In what universe is that fair? Right? How do you compete when the first place team is getting tens of millions of dollars more? It's such an uneven playing field. So that being the context, when a team like McLaren, like AlphaTauri, like Williams, like Aston Martin, when those teams are able to come back and be competitive and show up and win and string together all of the crazy things that you need to go right in order to win, it's unreal. And this weekend was such a great example of changing fortunes. We talked about Stroll. We talked about how he's been struggling. This weekend he comes back. Alonso was on fire this weekend. Checo came back this weekend. Gasly. I mean, this is why we love this sport, because you can start just at the bottom, and by mid-season you can be competitive again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it works. You wouldn't think it would, because you would go, oh, well, now the best drivers are only going to ever go to the best teams, so it's only going to be between the two or three teams. And it kind of ends up rolling like that. But at the same time, there always ends to be this kind of Kansas City shuffle that happens where an incredible driver like Valtteri Bottas ends up at an Alfa Romeo. Or an Albon who was driving in a Red Bull ends up at a Williams. Like the end of the day, because there is only 10 teams and 20 seats,
It does even out a little bit.
Opens up the opportunity for it not to get out of control and heavy weighted on one side.
And there's new talent knocking on the door. There's
all the time.
There's the Oscar Piastris of the world. You notice I didn't say Logan Sargents of the world. The Oscar Piastris of the world that are knocking on the door, and that when they show up, they're going to rip, and they're just going to go for it. And so, yeah, I do think that is a stabilizing factor.
Yeah.
And then again, you've got new money that comes in, right? You've got this whole team of investors that come behind Alpine. You've got Stroll, the senior, who comes in and literally saves one team, Force India, and then now he's in charge of Aston Martin, and so you do see these other forces that come in and kind of stabilize it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's something where you can't look away, because if you do too long, the grid's all gonna be mixed up again, and the fortunes are gonna change.
I think even when you look at the top, you look at Mercedes, and they're in P2 right now, but
who would have thought?
Ferrari took a chunk out of them this week. And so they could end on P3. They could end in P4 if they crap the bed and Norris keeps locking in second place and Piastri comes up and does some fiery stuff. I don't even know if that's statistically possible, but the point is that no one is safe.
Yeah.
And they all know it.
Yeah.
They all go into next year going, we can't rest on what happened last year.
Yeah.
Because it could be crazy the following year. The fortunes change in a moment. We know this with like you just mentioned, like AlphaTauri. We weren't even talking about them.
Yeah, we were
ignoring
them intentionally because they were giving us nothing to talk about. And this year this last weekend, they just came 100%. Out of nowhere. And it doesn't, and this is why I think it's fascinating. These guys aren't racing on the same type of track. They're not racing in the same environment or the same climate. They're racing all over the world. And so because the margins are so fine, like a grain of sand can like set things off, right? So that's why literally when you're half a second apart during qualifying, 17 racers were half a second apart.
Yes.
17 people were that close.
Yes.
So that's why all of these like factors, again, environment, altitude, temperature, you know, is it sunny? Is it cloudy? Is it raining? Is there like a biblical storm coming? Like those are all things that radically shake things up. And you just have no idea what's going to happen at the end of the day, which is fascinating.
It is an incredible sport. The fortunes can change at any moment. And I think what's interesting to me is that not only do the team know it, but the fans know it. Yeah. And it's what keeps us coming back because it's what made me show up to Brazil thinking that Mercedes was going to win because we all thought that they could pull it out.
I thought Hemi was going to be second.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And just like when I'm listening to Alfa Romeo, my ears perk up when the team principal goes, we can't develop our car this year. So we're going to throw it out and we're going to come to 2024 with a brand new car. And I think, Charles was pretty good in an Alfa Romeo. Maybe they could do something. I don't know. We do not know what could happen next year. And that's what we love about Formula One. You're on your toes.
That's what's incredible. And Formula One's not like other sports like baseball or football or soccer, where you can pull a dome over the field and have a climate-controlled atmosphere, right? Like, there's just so many variables. And, again, you see it on track, and you see some teams charging. The ones that you expect to be leading are falling away. And it's unpredictable, which is, again, what keeps us coming back year after year after year.
Yeah. Formula One is nuts.
It is.
It's the best. Well, next race is going to be Vegas.
Talk about unpredictability.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about unpredictability. Never been to Vegas. Well, Formula One was in Vegas a while ago, racing in a parking lot.
Yeah, it was not talk about that. It was not a good race.
This time around, though, it's gonna be
epic.
Unpredictable, epic.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
There's a lot of controversy. I think some of the drivers, well, not some, your favorite, your little homeboy, Max Verstappen.
You mean the undefeated champion, essentially, this year?
I set myself up for that one. He's saying it's mostly for entertainment and not for racing because the track is super simple, long straights in front of fancy hotels with tons of grandstands set up in front of them.
People paying $200,000.
Exactly. And so, honestly, either Vegas is going to be amazing or it's going to be article after article saying we acknowledge that we need to make some changes for next year. It was a good first start. And
I feel like there's a potential for this to be the American Monaco, where like big money rolls in.
That is
it's super
big.
Flashy. F1 as the organization does really well. They lock new deals. I feel like Vegas has that potential.
I mean, they're doing that. The problem for me is that America and Monaco are very different. America is over the top and crass and to the excess, whereas Monaco is sophisticated and, prestigious. So whereas Vegas, every week I get a new experience. I'm invited to a new Vegas F1 experience where they've erected a grandstand and they're selling tickets for $1,000 each. And so I think we could either oversaturate it with a bunch of drunkards who are falling all over themselves, because if we're being real, as Americans, we know what happens in Vegas. And, the teams are nervous about how they're even going to get their teams to the track. Like, I think there's going to be infrastructure issues. There's going to be a ton of different things that are happening. It's going to look amazing from the outside, but I think there will be some significant changes. It's the first.
It is.
The first is always the craziest. And so we're gonna be watching it live. We are so excited.
We are. I mean, if there was ever a chance for Max
to lose,
I do think it's Vegas,
really
purely because there's a level playing field in some respects because no one's raced there before. So everyone has the same amount of information as the other drivers, the rookies, the veterans. It's the first time for all of them.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens between Mercedes and Ferrari and McLaren, because they're all kind of in the mix now.
Yeah.
I think I'm also interested to see what happens between AlphaTauri and Williams. That's what I'll be looking at as far. But what are your predictions for the race in Vegas?
Well,
P1,
I was
P2,
wrong
and
last
P3.
time.
You
I
were
think we were both wrong last time. I'll probably be wrong again. It's a street circuit. Checo still has something to prove. Checo can lock P2 in Vegas. I think Checo is going to show up. I would say Checo P1, Max P2, and I'm going to say Alonso P3.
Okay.
Alonso's the vet. Checo is the street circuit guy, and Max is just Max. So those are my three.
Wow. Checo, Max, and Alonso.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to go
Your boy Hammy.
Hamilton P1, Norris P2, and Max P3.
That's literally what we said for Brazil.
Yeah, I know, but
it didn't happen.
Yeah. I jinxed it.
We did.
Anyway, thanks for joining us on Rolling Start. We have so much fun talking F1 every week. We will be back here debriefing, talking about what happens on track and off track after the Vegas Grand Prix.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to subscribe and like the show on whatever platform you're listening on, and we'll see you.
Peace.